Good morning and welcome to the OBX Wave Report on January the 4th. I am Robert Scribbler, your wave reporter here, where we discuss all things waves, weather, climate, and beach lifestyle. And recently on the broader climate side, on the broader climate and weather issue, there are two events ongoing in the Northern Hemisphere that are related to weather very tangentially to the Outer Banks that I'm going to be covering in a separate special segment of the wave report here. For this report, we're going to be focusing more in on the Outer Banks, although we will talk a little bit about the larger and weather climate picture for both the lower 48 United States and for the North Atlantic. So let's get into it. Right now, we are looking at a beautiful NOAA satellite shot showing the eastern United States blanketed by cloud cover. And here in Manio on the Outer Banks, I can tell you that the cloud conditions are partly cloudy. We've got some higher clouds, but the sun's streaming down through the clouds. The satellite shot might be a little bit deceptive. It looks like an extraordinarily dense cloud deck coming in from the satellite, but from the surface, it's still, I would say, partly to mostly cloudy out there right now. We had a little shower this morning, and we're expected to see more rain by late afternoon, evening time frame, and into the nighttime hours as storms fire up and down a frontal boundary that is sweeping into the eastern portion of the United States. For the Outer Banks, what this means is southerly winds coming in, kicking up surf for the southern beaches, while the northern beaches get that stronger wind blowing mostly offshore, which tends to push down the swells. And so that's a basic overview of conditions. Let's look at the infrared satellite shot, and we can see those storms firing across Georgia, Alabama, and South Carolina primarily as a front sweeps through. These storms are expected to march through Virginia and North Carolina and parts of the other parts of the Mid-Atlantic throughout today, and we're going to get the bulk of it, it looks like, this evening, maybe later tonight, as the frontal boundary sweeps on through. And this front is likely to put an end to the unseasonably warm conditions that we've seen over recent days, with readings in the upper 60s and lower 70s across the Outer Banks. So very warm conditions continuing today, and then likely cooler conditions tomorrow. Now, this front is pulling in not only storms, but a strong southwesterly wind flow, and that's going to affect waves on particularly the southern shores of the Outer Banks. I would also like to point out this massive swirl of clouds here off California. It's a huge and powerful storm system out here in the Pacific, kicking up some really extreme waves. I'm going to focus in on that particular storm system for a supplemental OBX wave report, but spoiler alert, California is starting to get hammered by this thing, and it's expected to dump massive amounts of precipitation over California and parts of the West. And in addition, the ocean conditions out here are extremely gnarly with very high significant wave heights, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. All right, and looking at the near shore conditions for the Outer Banks, waves just offshore of the southern banks are in the range of 5 feet, with that swell solidly coming into the south, and we have some strong southerly winds that are pushing that swell. The south swell continues on up the coastline toward the northern beaches as well, but drops down in the range of about 3 feet in the near offshore. These waves aren't entirely translating to the coastline. In the northern beaches, the east-facing beaches, we're seeing 1 to 2 foot waves. And for the south-facing beaches, we're seeing 2 to 4. In rare events, maybe a 5-foot swell running in here. All right, so I'm going to go through our summary of local wave spots for today, and we're not going to look at Ocracoke. This is an Ocracoke view from yesterday. And let's go ahead and start with Jeanette's Pier for today. And at present, conditions at Jeanette's Pier are 1 to 2 feet, with a primary swell for those 1 to 2 foot waves coming in at 8 seconds and a secondary swell coming in at 6 seconds. This is a south swell, so it's having to wrap around to hit the shores. Winds are coming out of the south-southwest at 13 miles per hour, so that's an offshore flow. The air temperature is 62 degrees Fahrenheit. It's very warm and balmy down here in Manio, and I'm sure it probably feels very similar down there at Jeanette's Pier. Yesterday at Jeanette's Pier, we had highs in the lower 70s. It was pretty insane. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we hit those same temperatures today, even though the forecast is calling for slightly cooler temperatures. I don't know. It's just been very, very warm here in the Outer Banks recently with that strong southerly flow. The ocean water temperature is 53 degrees at Jeanette's Pier. This is pretty chilly. I did see a surfer out there yesterday without a hoodie on, and likely due to the warmer air conditions. Also worth noting, with those smaller waves in the range of 1 to 2 feet, he didn't really have to duck dive much, and he was riding a longboard, so his head was mostly staying out of the water. I would recommend definitely some headgear, particularly if you're going to be going through waves as you head out. And with those 1 to 2 foot waves, you don't really have to duck dive as much. So if you're just going to go out on a longboard or a mid-sized board with a lot of flotation, then maybe you don't need some headgear. But you, with those water temperatures in the range of 53 degrees Fahrenheit, you're going to definitely want to have your booties and gloves and your 3 to 4 mil wetsuit ready to keep you warm. Weather conditions are cloudy with rain likely this afternoon and evening. And the expected high temperature today, according to the National Weather Service, is 64 degrees Fahrenheit. In my personal opinion, it might end up a little bit warmer. That's just kind of what we've seen lately here, just generally warmer than expected conditions. But the National Weather Service prediction is for 64-degree Fahrenheit temperatures. Moving on down the coast to the big wave spot of the Outer Banks. Buxton, we are so Buxton is experiencing some wraparound swells here, and Buxton is not the big wave spot today. It's just generally is a wave magnet. It's a place where bigger waves tend to hit. And so Buxton right now is seeing 2 to 3 foot waves coming in from the south and wrapping around that point there at Hatteras, and then coming into Buxton, with the primary swell coming in at 8 seconds and the secondary swell coming in at 6 seconds. Winds at Buxton are strong out of the southwest at 20 miles per hour, with a southwest flow here that is offshore. And those strong winds are definitely affecting the quality of the waves, probably chopping them up quite a bit. Air temperature at Buxton is quite warm at 72 degrees Fahrenheit right now. So very warm temperatures down there at Buxton. Ocean water temperatures are 65, so also not very cold. With those taller waves, you'll probably be duck diving more, so you may want to consider some headgear, although with those 65-degree water temperatures, for me, I don't think I would need the headgear in those conditions. Just dress appropriately to your tolerance to cold water. Weather conditions at Buxton are partly cloudy right now, with afternoon and evening rain expected. And the expected high for today, we've already reached at 72 degrees. Maybe it might inch up a little bit. We're not quite yet to the noonday hour yet, or area of or period of time when the peak temperatures will tend to be reached. And then for our last location, we are looking at Frisco today. So we're just going to go down to Frisco Pier, which is all chewed up by various storms here. And the wave conditions at Frisco right now are 3 to 4 feet. So for today, Frisco is our big wave location. We've also got 3 to 4 foot waves at Billy Mitchell. So the south-facing beaches here on Hatteras Island are getting the best surf, or at least the tallest surf conditions, and likely the best surf conditions, as they are facing more into both the wind and the swell. So those 3 to 4 foot waves are coming in with a primary period of 6 seconds, with a secondary period swell coming in at 8 seconds. Winds are also strong out of the southwest at 20 miles per hour, and at this beach, this is an onshore flow. Air temperatures are presently 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and the ocean water temperatures are presently 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Similar air and ocean water conditions as Buxton, so you're not likely to need a 3-4 mil. 2-3 will probably do you just fine, although you might still want to have some booties and gloves to keep your hands and feet warm. Weather conditions are partly cloudy there at Frisco, with afternoon and evening rain likely, and the expected high today at Frisco is 69 degrees Fahrenheit. Zooming out to provide some more larger range and longer term conditions for the Outer Banks, temperatures according to the Climate Prediction Center are expected to be in the range of average over the next 8 to 14 days, although it is worth noting that most of the United States is predicted to see above normal to considerably above normal temperatures. Precipitation outlook for the Outer Banks is above normal, with most regions of the United States expected to experience above normal precipitation and more stormy conditions, although it is worth noting that the southern portions of Texas and the eastern portions of the Great Lakes are expected to dry out quite a bit. I will like to note here the much above normal, considerably above normal precipitation predicted for California, particularly. California is likely to see some severe rain and snow impacts, as a succession of storm after storm after storm is predicted to impact the West Coast and in particular California. We're going to get into that some more later. So I did want to show you some of the longer range forecast for North America and the North Atlantic. And what we tend to see here in the Outer Banks are frontal systems just sweeping through periodically, bringing some stormy conditions, but nothing too stormy. I don't see any coastal lows or strong coastal lows developing in the forecast. We're going to keep an eye on that, as conditions do tend to seem to favor the development of coastal systems, but we haven't seen anything lately in the models that indicate that. Right now, the US West Coast sees this massive storm system lurking just off the US West Coast with a 956 millibar pressure, which is extremely powerful. It's got near hurricane force winds in the southern quadrant of this storm and extraordinary wave heights, which we'll talk about a little bit more, but it's also packing a major punch when it comes to precipitation, which is expected to progress into California very shortly now over the next 6 to 12 hours. I'm going to go ahead and run this model so you guys can see what's expected for North America, the Pacific, and the North Atlantic. And we're just going to run in through the next day. And as you can see, this very powerful storm system encroaches on the US West Coast, sweeping in powerful storms to California, and that is expected. It's also worth mentioning that we have our expected low for Ireland and the UK sweeping out of Baffin Bay by tomorrow, and then rapidly intensifying on Friday to a lower 940 millibar system. This system is expected to bring gale force conditions to Ireland and the UK, and very, very heavy surf to the Irish coast. We're going to talk about that later. It is also worth noting that the front by Friday has swept on through the Outer Banks, bringing cooler and clearer conditions. and likely a northwesterly wind pattern. I don't really see much in the wave forecast showing improvement in wave conditions, although it does not seem that the waves are going to get knocked down too much either. So it's likely that we'll see 1 to 3 or 2 to 4 foot wave conditions across the Outer Banks over the next 1 to 3 days. So thank you for joining me for the OBX wave report. Actually, hold on. Do we do this? Yeah, we're going to do this. Looking at the North Atlantic, we don't yet see any powerful storm systems here stirring things up, creating a large synoptic swell pattern. But it's just worth generally noting that the swells in the near coastal region have come down a little bit, and that over the next couple of days, we see a slight improvement in the swell conditions south, and then the swells tamp down off the US East Coast with a more northwesterly wind pattern and then the calmer wind pattern. And we don't really see an improvement in the swell conditions in the models over the next 5 days. But it's also worth noting that swells do continue to be rideable in these forecasts. So it's not like we're seeing completely flat conditions out there either. So in any case, thank you for joining me for the OBX wave report. And I will be focusing in on some special reports for the two strong storm systems, one impacting the US West Coast and another impacting the UK and Ireland very shortly in two special reports. And also, please remember to do everything you can to help save our beautiful coastlines from the impacts of climate change driven by fossil fuel burning. And the center of gravity in facing this crisis is rapidly transitioning to clean energy. So please help do everything you can to support the clean energy transition and to do all the things that we need to do to protect our beautiful coastlines that we also love and